Hey everybody, welcome to my Geek Rant. So today I'm going to be talking about Tarkin, the new novel in the new canon of Star Wars novels. Previously I did A New Dawn, link somewhere floating around my head. So now I'm going to do Tarkin, which is the second novel. It was written by James Luceno. Some of you might be familiar with that author. He is the author of Darth Plagueis. He also did the Labyrinth of Evil and the Dark Rise of Darth Vader. So he basically did like the tail end of Revenge of the Sith and the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, which was like kind of like a mock trilogy of the, like, it's called the Revenge of the Sith trilogy, the Dark trilogy. Anyway, I digress about that. But he has now written a new novel in the vein of his Darth Plagueis novel, where he kind of goes through his whole life. He did it with Tarkin now, which is, of course, Tarkin's the Grand Moff of the Empire. He was the leader of the Death Star, as we saw in The New Hope. So now we're getting more insights into that character. So first, I'm going to start off with talking about the characters. So we get in touch with Vader, which is something that Luceno is very familiar with, that subject matter. So in this, we get to see we get some more insights on Vader, where he is. He's pretty much just the enforcer at this point, 5 years after the Clone Wars has ended. When we first are introduced to him, he's, killing people as he always does. And Tarkin is actually not taken aback by that. He's actually, he's okay with it. Like he knows that it's something that just has to be done in this new empire, which is something that his I'll forget his name. He had somebody with him, a visor. He had a visor with him who was kind of like squeamish at all the death that was happening around him, and Tarkin was okay with it, which is something I'll get into later when I talk about Tarkin specifically. But yeah, with Vader, we see him, coming into his own a little bit as the Emperor's enforcer, and he has to team up with Tarkin in this. There's the plot deals with these rebels who are basically, attacking the Empire. Not the big rebel alliance that we know in the movies, but, sort of a smaller thing. And Palpatine sort of tasks Vader and Tarkin to team up to take them down. So that's how we get more insight on Vader in that aspect. And I thought Vader was depicted, as well as he could have been in the context of this story. Obviously, it is not his story. We'll probably get more insight into him in the Lords of the Sith novel coming out next year, but it was enough that it was good. James Luceno rarely disappoints, and he didn't disappoint with this novel, so he did really well on that. We also kind of follow a little bit of Palpatine. We see where he is 5 years after the Clone Wars, and we see where he resides now. He actually resides in the Jedi Temple now. So if you guys ever wondered that, I always wondered that. I wondered if, we know that the Jedi Temple was still standing by the time of Return of the Jedi, but we weren't really sure of what was going on with it, but basically Palpatine is there, and there actually is a secret about the Jedi Temple which is hidden inside the basement, or at least below the basement, which you'll read about in the novel, which I thought was pretty cool, that little bit of what is to be revealed in the novel. But Palpatine, again, he was depicted very well. I enjoyed his conversation with Vader, which I'm sure we're gonna get much more of in Lords of the Sith, but I always like the back and forth between Vader and Palpatine, seeing that master-apprentice dynamic within the dark side, because we always see Jedi apprentice with, their Jedi masters, and to see it from the Sith standpoint, I think was really cool to see, especially this one particular scene where they're talking back and forth, and basically Vader is not too pleased about being tasked with Tarkin initially, but Palpatine just like throws it right back at him, and I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So, of course, this novel is about Tarkin himself, and we, of course, get the most insight about his character, starting with, we get some backstory on him, on how he grew up to be this Grand Moff Tarkin. There's a lot of insight into his upbringing on his homeworld, and on the homeworld they have these rite of passages for, when you're, gonna grow up and be known as a Tarkin on that planet, you have to go through some very vigorous training in the wilderness of their planet, which is called Iryadu. And I thought all of that stuff was extremely well. That's probably my favorite part of the book, is actually when we do go into Tarkin's backstory from when he was like an adolescent to being an adult, before he actually, got into the Empire, and before he even, was in the Clone Wars even. But that was definitely my favorite part. At first, to be honest, I was totally not going to be into this story at all. Of all the novels that are coming out this year and the next year, Tarkin was going to be my least favorite. But so far, of the two books that have been out, it's definitely my favorite. I thought Tarkin was going to be very boring, it just would have been about military jargon, but it was actually very good, and most of it came from his backstory. His backstory was very intriguing, and getting more insight into his mind and his character was very, very compelling to me. And of course, there's we follow a band of rebels who are basically the antagonists of the story, I guess, or protagonists or heroes, if depending on how you're looking at it. But really, they're the antagonists of the story because Tarkin is our protagonist, and we follow them. And the most I got out of that set of characters is what the Rebel Alliance needs to be. It's kind of this similar to the rebels that we see in the TV series. They're, this disjointed family of crew that's, just trying to make it, trying to repel against the Empire, and they're not doing as well as they could be because they're not banned with this huge Rebel Alliance, which is, it's good that we're seeing these stepping stones into what the Rebel Alliance needs to be. It's going to start off with these, disjointed groups that need to join together in their forces and just, go at it. Which is kind of similar to any rebel story you might have ever read, like the American Revolution. We needed to band together our colonies to, take over Britain and all of them. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It was good insight into what the rebels started off as and what they will become. And that's pretty much the whole plot of the story too. It's about these rebels who are attacking this specific base. And then it's actually kind of like a political drama in the sense that it's very there's a lot going on in the background of how the rebels are attacking all these individual bases and what's happening. But it's still very good. It's still very good. It's not like it's a boring thing. I actually got through this book much easier than I did A New Dawn. I actually thought it was going to be harder to read this book, even though there was a lot of not even big words, but there was words that people never use in real life that Lucino uses. His vocabulary is very scholarly. You would think the word doesn't mean anything, but then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's actually the perfect word to use in that situation. And then it was just it was stuff like that. But it was actually really easy to read. I read through it very fast. I read through it in 4 days, and I enjoyed it a lot. But be warned though, this is not the same as Darth Plagueis. This isn't about Tarkin's whole life, though it is about a majority of his life. At first I thought it was going to be about, from his upbringing all the way until his death on the Death Star. But no, it's actually a small pocket of his life, particularly this time period 5 years after the Clone Wars. So if you're thinking this is going to be an all-inclusive Tarkin novel, it's not really. It's just a little bit of a snippet on Tarkin, but it was compelling enough that that wasn't a big gripe for me at all. It was still a good book. Speaking of the book and how I would rate it, I would definitely say this would constitute a reread or even an audiobook. I'm definitely going to reread it again at some point, or I'm probably going to purchase the audiobook to listen to the audiobook next time I read it. So I would give it that rating if I was giving it a rating. I didn't have any major gripes with the book. The reason I don't give it a full rating, the same as I would give to Revenge of the Sith novelization or Shatterpoint or the Darth Bane trilogy, is because it didn't really completely speak to me as a Star Wars fan, because like I said, Tarkin is not my favorite character. Though I found him compelling in the story, it still didn't it didn't overshoot my expectations or make me feel like it was one of the classic Star Wars novels. But it's still very, very good, very solid. I'm definitely gonna reread it again, so I recommend it to you guys. You should definitely check it out. It's definitely the best of the 2 books that are out right now in the new canon novels. So that's it. As always, peace, love, and may the Force be with you always.
And most recently, Star Wars A New Dawn. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the one, the only, John Jackson Miller.
Hey, how's it going?
Alright, cool. So you're Hagrid, I am the boy who lived. So I cheated a little bit. I played last night just to see how to play.
Oh